Hello and welcome to lesson 9. Boy, we're moving through time, aren't we? We are three-fourths of the way through this unit on Galatians, and lesson title is The Cost of Freedom. Um, I don't know how these people come up with these titles to these lessons, but it's okay. We'll go with it. We're in Galatians 4:21 through 31. The main idea is legalism lets you brag about how good you are. Grace humbles you to realize that only God's mercy can save you. And I believe that. Don't quite know what it has to do with the lesson, but we'll wade into it and make the best of it. The question to explore that I selected, I guess when you look at that title page on page 90 through the unit, I've got some different options here, and I pick every week which one I want to use, which statement. Is there any legalism in my heart? I'm sure we all got a little bit. I tend to not be a legalist. Um, tend to be very forgiving. I try to be. Look over people's issues, and all God's people got issues. I got my own. You've got yours, and so that's kind of how it works out. But this lesson, I think it's really two Sunday school lessons. So let's wade into it, give you some background. You look over there at Genesis chapter 12, and Abraham is Abram, and God's called him from Ur of Chaldees to go to this place he had never been before, and he goes. And Abraham and Sarah are childless. Now, she has servants. They have servants. Wealthy is Abraham is accumulating wealth. God's blessing him, and but they don't have a child. And in that culture, that's a terrible, tragic situation. Your name would not carry forth. Your family would end, practically speaking, there. And it was a terrible situation. And same thing in our culture. It's very difficult for a family to not have a child when they want one so desperately. That's never changed. Well, God came to Abraham and said, I'm going to bless you, and your descendants are going to be like the sands on the seashore. There's just going to be everywhere. I'm going to bless you. And Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. Well, the problem is Sarah was not there when God spoke to Abraham. He's going to speak to her later through angels. But twice God came to Abraham and said, I'm going to bless you. You're going to be the father of nations. And to that point, Abraham believed the Lord. Well, the problem is Sarah is desperately wanting a child, and she's not. She's gotten old. Old people don't have babies. Okay, she understands that, and she's trying to figure out. She feels like she's worthless, um, as a wife, and she gets in front of the situation and tries to remedy it herself. I'm sure that Abraham went to Sarah after he talked to the Lord, and the Lord told him that, but she wants to fix the situation herself because of the reality of she's living. Okay, she takes her maid servant, one of their slaves, and gives her to Abraham and says, "Go have a child with her, and she will fulfill my role as a wife and as a mother." And dumb old Abraham's like, "Duh, okay." And so, she told me to do it. So he takes her, and they create a baby. And the baby is Ishmael. This is Hagar, the maid servant, and she is a slave. And the point of the thing is that God had told Abraham and Sarah, "You're going to have a child." No, you are, not her. You. And so once this happened and the child was born, then Sarah resented Hagar. and which grieved her, and she ended up taking the child and leaving. Now, this is not a lesson about slavery. That would eventually change. It took way too long for it to change. Doesn't mean this was God's will for society, but it was part of their culture. It was in the New Testament, and eventually that did change, and Christianity played a part in that. But you know, the point of it is that they did not believe God. God was speaking truth into a current reality that they just could not comprehend. Okay, and so what happened is we believe that Ishmael became the leader of the Palestinian nation. And part of it is God still loved Hagar and he loved Ishmael. When they left, they were about to starve to death and they were going to die of thirst, and the angel of the Lord shows up and helps them. And God blessed Ishmael in a different way. And so, it wasn't that he didn't care. He did care for them. And if you read the text, you'll read all of that. The point is that the son of a slave is still a slave. And the son of Sarah, who is free, is free. And Paul is going to use this illustration to say, you're the son, you're the descendants of freedom, but you're choosing to be a slave. And you are disinheriting yourself from what is legally and truly yours, and you're selling yourself back into slavery. And it's an illustration that Paul uses to one more time communicate that these Judaizers are not giving you the lowdown. Okay, so that's the backstory of the lesson. Let's go ahead and look at it. And I divided it up into three passages, 21 through 23, where he talks about Abraham had two sons, one by the slave woman and the other by the free woman. And 22 through, let's see, 20, I haven't got that number right. It's 24 through 28 is the women, there's two covenants. These are two different paths for two different children. And then, the last part, 28 through 31, is, Paul is saying, you're a child of Abraham through Sarah, and you're a child of promise, and you're a child of freedom because of that. So why are you selling yourself back into slavery? I don't understand it. Let's read the first passage. Tell me, you who are want to be under the law. Notice how he says under the law. You can either be under the law or under freedom or grace. You who want to be under the law, are you not aware what the law says? Are you sure you really want to do this? For it is written that Abraham had two sons, one by the slave woman and the other by the free woman. His son was the slave woman who was born according to the flesh, and his son by the free woman was born as a result of a divine promise. And you know the story. God came to Abraham and said, I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Let me see if I can find the other one. The other covenant. Oh. Well, he says well, I'm not finding it. The point is they're going to have a child, and God's going to bless them with Isaac, and they just needed to give it a little bit of time and let God do His great work. Well, and it goes back to this story of Abraham and Sarah and Abraham getting ahead of God and forcing the situation to happen and not being patient with the Lord, even though their circumstances said otherwise. Been there, done that, haven't we? Well, let's read verse 24 through 27. These things are being taken figuratively. Now, he's saying that I'm spiritualizing this a little bit. Okay. Um, I want you to think about this. It's it's figurative. It's symbolic. Okay. The women represent two covenants. One covenant is from Mount Sinai and bears children who are to be slaves. This is Hagar. Now Hagar stands for Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to the present city of Jerusalem because she is in slavery with her children. But the Jerusalem that is above is free, and she is our mother. For it is written, Be glad, barren woman, you who never bore a child, shout with joy and cry aloud. And you who were never in labor, because more are the children of the desolate woman than those who has a husband. And what he's trying to say is the slave woman who had a child who is still a slave relates to the law. And that's where he's tying it to Mount Sinai, where Moses gets the Ten Commandments. And he says the law, in and of itself, is like slavery because you just can't live up to it. So he's trying to figuratively link, say, Hagar and Ishmael to the Ten Commandments and saying, Abraham had two sons. One was the son of a slave, and one was a son of his real wife, Sarah, who's the wife who gives freedom. Well, interesting concept, but he's speaking figuratively. He's just trying to say, you've got two paths here. Which one are you going to choose? Verse 28, Now you brothers and sisters like Isaac are children of promise. At that time, the son born according to the flesh persecuted the son born by the power of the Spirit. It is the same now. There's competition here. But why does the scripture say, Get rid of the slave woman and her son, for the slave woman's son will never share in the inheritance with the free woman's son. Therefore, brothers and sisters, we're not children of the slave woman, but of the free woman. I need to go back and find that quote. He quotes it. I'm sure your Sunday school lesson tells you where that is, but I need to go back and read that. But interesting story. Go back and read it. It begins in Genesis chapter 12. It tells about God's covenant with Abraham. Then you have this discussion about Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. Then it comes back to Sarah and her conceiving and having Isaac. So, he's just saying you need to decide, are you going to choose freedom and liberty, or are you going to choose slavery? If you are going to be under the law, then you're going to have to keep the law. And it's a form of slavery. You just can't live up to it. And there's no freedom in that. And Jesus came to give us freedom. He fulfilled the law. We keep the law by being obedient, but it has nothing to do with our salvation. Well, let's look at some truths today from this. You see how Paul is, each week, he's offering a new argument to try to help convince them that they need to choose freedom and abandon legalism. And so he's going back each part of these lessons in Galatians and giving them a different argument. And that's kind of how Paul worked. He didn't just give one argument, he gives several. All right, here's some truths. First one is to choose to live in slavery to the law is like giving up your birthright and denying your inheritance. That's what he's saying in the lesson. Why would you do that? Why would you go back to slavery? Made no sense to him. Second truth is slavery to anything is always negative and should be avoided. Um, it could be some terrible sin in your life that you can't seem to rid yourself free of. It is like slavery. And God does not want us bound to any type of something that's not godly. And so slavery to anything is always negative and should be avoided, repented of. Last truth is when the Lord promises something, believe Him. I mean, even though the current reality may not fit that, if you hear it from God and you know that He told you, then believe Him. Okay? Even when it goes against conventional wisdom sometimes, okay? If you're sure it's from the Lord and not from someone else, then believe Him. And if you don't believe Him, then calamity may follow. And that's exactly what's happened with Abraham's descendants. Um, you know, the Palestinians are the descendants of Ishmael. And I guess y'all know we're at war this week. Um, God tried to bless um, Ishmael and his descendants, but his true promise was through Isaac and Jacob and Joseph. Um, and so, here we go. The point is, Abraham and Sarah should have trusted God, and they did. And now we've lived with the consequences of that forever. Well, let me pray with you. Jesus, we love you. We love each other. Bless us like only you can. Help us to trust you. Help us to choose freedom and not slavery. We love you. Guide us this week. In your name I pray. Amen. You take care. Have a great week. We'll keep studying Galatians next week.